It's time now to start working on our first representative painting. And in these next 3 videos, we're going to see all the things that we need to carry out our first realistic work. In particular, here we're going to deepen the concept of representative analysis, making all the necessary considerations that we need to get at the end of this picture. In this work, we are finally able to use all the fundamentals that we have seen and on which we have practiced ourselves with the exercise first and then using the abstract. Also here, to blend and fade our oils, we're going to use both the mixed and the multi-layer method. We're going to make some mistake to see how at the end we can always find a way to carry out our work in a proper way, even if we don't follow exactly the best strategy, like for example in the case of the sketch, where we have used the orange felt tip pen that we know it could be visible through our pigments. With the methods that we have seen in the last video, we could make this sketch in any reasonable size. Here we're going to use a 50 by 40 cm canvas. Since we made our sketch in a quite dark color, to make sure that we're going to cover those lines, we have to work choosing opaque pigments, or at least mixing them with the less opaque that we may eventually need. To start, as always when we commence a new work, as first part of the representative analysis, we have to decide what colors we're going to prepare on our palette. Only this time it's not so easy anymore because we have to choose them accordingly with what we see in our mode. And this means that we have to analyze our scene, and for each of its parts we must have at least one rough idea on what color we're going to use and how. Fortunately, we are not a copy machine, so we are free to change something and arrange a little bit the colors in the way we want, as far as the scene that we represent at the end looks realistic and consistent. Let's start, for example, from the background. The main color is the brown, and if we watch carefully, we can see that it's darker on the left and lighter on the right. There are many waves on the fabric that we are not going to represent. So, our strategy for the background is to make a transition between a middle dark brown on the left and a middle light brown on the right. We're going to get this transition by blending on the canvas some middle dark brown with some white. In this case, on our palette, we are going to prepare some very opaque zinc and titanium white in one place, and we're going to mix it with some very opaque burnt umber, which is a very dark brown, to get the middle dark grade that we need. We're going to prepare also some burnt umber that we're going to use as corrector to eventually darken this middle brown for some shadow and for the coffee. If we check the tablecloth, it's kind of wavy fabric as well, and its color goes from orange on the wave's dark side to tan on the bright side. Also in this case, we're not going to represent all those waves, but we're going to paint it uniformly using some tan that we are going to get by mixing on our palette a good quantity of zinc and titanium white, a touch of burnt umber, and some opaque Naples yellow. For the silk, we are going to prepare a middle grade blue mixing some semi-transparent Prussian blue with some zinc and titanium white. And some Prussian blue that we are going to use as corrector to darken it and for the silk dark side, while we're going to use the white as corrector to lighten it up. For the cup, we're going to use some white that we're going to blend with some gray right on the canvas. On our palette, we already have the white, so we're going to prepare some gray mixing some very opaque ivory black and some white. We're going to use this gray also to work on the stainless steel items that we have in our scene. We are also going to prepare some ivory black to use as corrector for this gray and for the two handles of the teapot. We're going to mix a drop of red vermilion with some lemon yellow to get the color of the orange. And as corrector, we're going to use some opaque Naples yellow that we're also going to use on the teapot to turn the stainless steel into brass. We're gonna need some opaque crimson red to work on the apple together with some yellow and some white. We're gonna carry out the eggs and their reflection mixing the middle dark brown with tan and white. We're going to use 2 grades of brown with some white to work on the carafe and its liquid inside, where we are also going to need some Naples yellow to warm it up. These are all the colors that we're going to need for this work, so this first part of the representative analysis is complete. Now that our palette is ready, we can finally start our painting. Now, the second part of our representative analysis starts. The scene that we have chosen looks pretty complex, mostly because we never made anything like this before. And this may scare us a little bit. But, like for any project that we do in our life, no matter how difficult it is, if we divide it in parts and we approach every part separately, it doesn't seem so difficult anymore. And if we break those parts even in smaller parts, we arrive in a situation that we feel comfortable challenging ourselves with. We just need to trust our skills and work it one piece at a time. So, at the end, no matter how big and complex is the scene that we decide to represent, if we break it in small pieces, and for each piece we make a strategy based on the fundamentals, we know that we can represent it. It's just a matter of time. We only have to make sure that every part that we represent fits our scene in the way we want. We have to keep moving our attention in and out between the details that we are working on and the way it matches our scene. For example, let's bring our attention on the teapot, which in my opinion is the most difficult part of this painting with all these reflections. Even isolated, it still looks quite complex. So, one more time, we're gonna dip our focus on one of its details. For example, the top part. And we can keep going until we get in a situation that it's easy for us to represent on our support. Let's say, for example, that we're going to focus on this part of the scene that we're going to use to start our work. We're going to continue our representative analysis piece by piece, deciding how we're going to represent every part using the colors that we have on our palette. And following these decisions, we are going to work representing every piece on the canvas. As first work, we're not going too deep in our analysis and representation. We're gonna keep it quite simple so that it's going to be easy to follow. So inside this area, we're gonna pick one part that we're going to use to start. Let's say this one on the left. If for now we ignore these small reflections that we see inside, that we can always do in a second time, we can see that the whole area is almost of the same color. So a good strategy for now is to paint the whole area uniformly with a middle dark brown, that we can always blend with some white later to correct its lightness. It looks pretty dark, and this may be because the white canvas is flashing our eyes and it's not the best situation to see if the color is the one we want. So, for example, if we paint this area with some dark brown and the area beside with the same color that we have used here, it becomes quite difficult to see well. Don't worry about what we just did, we're going to rework it at the end. For now, we're going to stop working on the teapot and we're going to start painting the background. As we had decided before, we're going to make a transition here between 2 tones of brown, one darker on the left and one lighter on the right. The best course of action to paint the background is to work it only in one time, as we did before in our exercises. But since we said that we're going to make some mistake, here we're going to paint it one piece at a time while the picture proceeds. For now, we're going to focus only on this area above the teapot where we're going to start bringing on the canvas some brown mixed with some white, making a coarse blending and bringing it close to the borders. We're going to fill the whole area above the teapot. For now, we don't need to make a fine job, we just need to cover the canvas with some color more or less similar to the final one. Our task at the moment is to bring on the canvas the colors that we need, filling all the areas of the part that we're focusing on, working on the connection between them, like for example here on the border between the teapot and the background. Something that we should notice is that using these opaque pigments we can easily cover the sketch lines, even if they are quite dark. Unfortunately, this is not always the case because most of the time, as we said, we can't get exactly the color that we want with the opacity that we want. Now, let's get back to our scene and let's analyze what we have and let's start bringing on the canvas the colors that we need to fill those areas. For example, here, we're going to paint this part uniformly with a middle dark brown. This time we're going to do the opposite. We're going to start bringing some white there and we're going to correct it later using some brown. The handle is actually an easy job because except for these two dots where the light gets reflected, it's actually completely black. That's what we're going to do. We're going to bring some black here and we're going to paint this part uniformly, leaving empty the spots for the reflections. Using a clean brush, we also start working on the borders with the background. We're going to bring some brown here to darken this area, and we also start joining it with the area below. If now we move our attention back on the background, it seems too dark. So we're going to blend it with some white. And using a rounded brush, we're going to work it to start smoothing the transition. We're going to darken this area, keep filling the white canvas. And now we can finally start to correct with some white the lightness of the part where we started. If we check this area, it's very dark. So we're going to start bringing here some dark brown. And using a clean brush, we're going to join it with the area below. We're going to paint the two white dots of the light reflection on the handle, and slowly we work their borders, reducing their size. Now, we're going to continue working on the background here, where it's still empty, blending some white with the brown we have on the canvas. We're going to blend some brown, and then with a rounded brush, we're going to start smoothing it. Let's stop for a moment and let's sum up. What we did so far was checking piece by piece what we have in the part of the scene where we're focusing on. We made a strategy on the colors we had to use and on how to blend them, and accordingly we brought the colors on the canvas, joining them. Although this is just the first step and we will still have to work and modify this area, it starts already to look like the left part of the teapot lid, even if it's completely different from our scene, just by bringing the right colors in the right place of the canvas. To continue using a clean brush, we're going to work the right border of the handle with the background. We're going to blend some white here, working the border with the background, and bit by bit, working one detail at a time, we're going to carry out this part. We're going to start bringing some black here to work on this handle reflex. If we make a mistake, as we did before using a ear stick, we're going to remove the color that accidentally we brought there, and we are going to repaint it, in this case using some white. If we check our model, on the base of the handle we have a light brown reflex here. So using some yellow, we're going to draw a line right on the base of the handle. And we're going to work its connection with the black. We're going to continue working on this reflex. On the right side, we have this light area. So we're going to bring there some light brown that we get by mixing some white and some brown. Here we have this reflex, so we're going to start bringing there some white. Now, if we check this area on the right, we get these reflections of the background fabric waves that we said that we are not going to represent. So, as we did for the left side, we're going to paint this area using some middle dark brown that we're going to blend with some white to correct its lightness. And we're going to use some middle light brown for the reflex here of the lid. We start bringing the brown first, working the border with the handle, and then bringing some white here to lighten up this reflex. And we're going to blend them. Now actually the reflex is too dark, so we're going to blend some white there. We're going to continue our work on the background, blending some middle dark brown with some white, bringing the color close to the border. Then, using a clean rounder brush, we're going to start smoothing it and working the border between the background and the teapot. Now, we start cleaning up the area, correcting the lightness and the shapes where we need. For example, we're going to correct the shape here where we have this reflex. We blend some white to lighten this part up a little bit. And we're going to work on the shape of the teapot in this area, adjusting the path of its border with the background. And we're going to continue smoothing the background. We're going to stop here for now, and we're going to continue this painting in the next video. If you enjoyed this video, we will really appreciate if you could click on like and subscribe to our channel. It will also help us very much if you could leave a comment. Thank you for watching this video and see you in the next one.